My name is Taylor and I'm a reading specialist, and I love the science and research behind reading, and I also want to share what I know about reading instruction and debunk today in this video one of the most common myths I see happening in early literacy instruction. And there are pre-service, in-service teachers, people who are reading specialists who are just unfamiliar with the science behind how to teach high frequency words. Now, I titled this video How to Teach Sight Words, and so I'm just going to start right away with saying why I called it sight words. So here's the myth, and I will kind of answer it throughout the whole video. First off, those words like the, and, said, from, is, there, here, all those words, you may know them as sight words. You may know them as high frequency words. You may know them as the Dolch or the Fry list, those words that maybe your child comes home with and they have 100 of them that they say they need to know by the end of first grade. Those words are what I'm going to address in this video, and how we actually can teach them and can effectively teach them to all students and the research behind it. So first off, I want to make a very clear distinction, and I titled this sight words because most people call those words sight words, but I want to illustrate with this one quote to help you understand what a sight word is. I heard this quote once and it changed my mind and view, and it helped me to understand, so hopefully it will help you too. So a sight word is any word that you know and recognized instantly and automatically. Any word. So that could be can, that could be learn, that could be math, that could be science, that could be like any word that you recognize instantly and automatically. That's a sight word. And this is the quote that helped me so much. Every word wants to be a sight word when it grows up. So in the teaching world, we kind of just refer to all those words as sight words. Most parents just know those as sight words, but I'm always like, oh, I know what you're saying, I know what you're trying to say, but it's not technically correct. And I want to get clear on that, and then it can help you understand the science behind it and then the practical tips. So I'm going to make a distinction here, and like I said, a lot of teachers refer to them as sight words still, but I'm hoping that with this, more people can understand and learn what a sight word is. So all words that you know or recognize instantly and automatically can be sight words, and we want all kids to have lots of sight words in their mind. So in the research literature, in the reading science literature, they make very clear distinctions. Now in the education world, we're a little fuzzy on it. So I'm gonna stick with these terms for the sake of this video. So number one, those words, those 100 words, the Fry words list, the Dolch list that those are important words. We need early readers to be able to access those words and read them so that they can access a lot of text, right? They need to know it. And good and so and from, those words are really important. We want kids to learn them so that they can enter into text. So we refer to those words as high frequency words. So high frequency words, which this word is coming around more in the world of teaching and literacy instruction, high frequency words are words that are most common in text. So if we want kids to learn how to read, we want to teach them those most common ones. We want to teach those the and said and from and good and all those words because so common. Okay, so we have high frequency words. Now, here's the next thing. Those high frequency words can become sight words, and I'll get into that later of how we can help students be able to have those words as sight words. But we have high frequency words, and then we have two different categories. So I'm gonna maybe make a little graphic here to help you understand. So we have high frequency regular words and high frequency irregular words. So high frequency regular words are words like and good. They are regular, they have regular patterns. In fact, we can teach them similar to how we have kids sound out words and practice reading instruction that way with more of a phoneme graphing, phonics-based approach, right? The sound symbol correspondence. We can do that with words like and good pretty easily. But usually you will see, and this is where I want to debunk, usually you will see teachers handing out those lists and saying to memorize, or you'll see them in classrooms and they will be just tapping on the wall and having kids memorize all those words, which I'm not a teacher basher, but I'm just saying there's some disconnect here between the science and instruction, and I want to help with that. So we have high frequency regular words, and we can actually treat those words the same as we treat all other words, and I will show you how to teach them. And then we have high frequency irregular words, and this is, I believe, why we treat those lists as memorization lists, and why we just send them home and say, okay, memorize them. Tell your kid it, just memorize the whole word and go for it. Those words are words like said and from and does. So they are irregular. See if you can figure out why. Think about the word from. What's irregular or what's tricky about the word from? I want to see if you can get it. The part that's irregular is not the f, or the it's the sound, and we represent it with an O. That's tricky, but every other part of that word is not tricky. So we are doing kids a disservice when we treat them as whole words. And so I want to get into some practical information here and something that you can pick up and grab right away. I love talking about the science behind it. I love, I could go on about this, but I think that we need more like practical. Okay, so if you're sitting there watching this and you're like, okay, so what do? I hear what you're saying. This sounds good. What can we do? And the reason why I want to go into this is we don't actually, let me say this really quick, we don't actually read words as a whole unit. We don't. We good readers are attending to every part of the word. They're attending to all the phonemes and the graphemes, and that's how they're storing them. And so when we're treating them as whole words, we run into issues. Now, there are some kids that you could give them those lists and you'll be like, they got it, they're good, they're accurate, it's awesome. But those kids have the skill of what we call orthographic mapping, and some kids need more help with it. So with that skill. So we can do all kids a huge service by teaching this way. And the way that I'm going to show you is we can teach these words really effectively for all kids. And if you're a parent or pre-service teacher, an in-service teacher, this is the way that I hope you will start implementing instead of treating these words as whole chunks and whole units to memorize. You will find much more success approaching it in this way, because this is what we know about the brain and how it learns and stores words into our sight vocabularies. So here's the practical instruction. Get those words out, right? Start with the. Now, this is the way that I teach the kids that I work with. So if I'm starting with the word the, okay, there is one irregular part in that word. See if you can think about it. Is the irregular? No. It makes sense. So the sound is the tricky part. So if I was working with a kid, I would say, okay, we're going to learn the word the. Can you say the word the? And they'll respond. I'm going to say, okay, let's think about the sounds in the word the. The, and I will have them do that with me. The, Okay, now I'm going to show you in this word, we spell the sound with a TH. And that sound, it's actually tricky. You may be thinking of a letter that you think would spell the sound, but we spell it with an E in this word. And that's tricky. So I'm going to put a heart under it so you remember that we have to remember just that part by heart. Now let's read it together. The. Okay, can you point, and I would say this to the child, can you point to the sound? And I'd have them point to that TH. Can you point to the sound? And they'd point to the E. And then I'd have them slide their finger across and read it, the. Then I would have them practice spelling it 3 times. So I would say, okay, now I'd erase the board. I'd say, okay, now it's your turn to spell the word. Tell me the sounds in the. And then they would go and say the, And as they are saying those sounds, they are writing the TH and the E. And I'm saying, okay, now what part was the tricky part? They point to the E and then they draw a heart under it. I'm like, that's right. What's the word? The. So that's one practical example of how to teach. Now let me get into another one. So another word that's common that we need to teach, that's a very high frequency, irregular word, is the word does. So I would be with that student, I would say, okay, now we're gonna learn the word does. Can you say does? And sometimes I would have them think of a sentence with that word just to kind of get their brain thinking about does. And then we would tap out the sounds or just say the sounds slowly. There's lots of different ways to do it. So, okay, what are the sounds in does? D, uz. And they would do that with me. And I would show them, okay, so the D sound is easy. We spell it with a D. And that sound, oh my heck, it's so tricky. We spell the sound with an O and an E. Oh my gosh, I know that's so crazy. That's so tricky, but it's all right. We can remember it, and I draw a heart under it. Say that's the sound, how we spell the sound in this word. Well, that's tricky, not common. And then the last sound, z, we spell with an S, which is actually not tricky because we have a lot of words with S that have the z sound at the end. And then I'd go through that same process with them of reading the word and then having them say the sounds while they write the word and pointing out to me what part is tricky. So I hope, and I'm getting so many minutes into this video, and I have a lot more that I could say, but if you are a parent and a pre-service teacher or an in-service teacher and just want to help more kids out, this is a great way to approach those words. And the process, this is the process of orthographic mapping. So it almost feels like the opposite way of reading, but it's actually how we all store words into our sight vocabularies is through knowing the sounds, knowing the order of the sounds, the string of sounds, and then attaching those sounds to letters. And that is going to give all of your students much more success. And just to prove my point a little bit, I work with lots of kids with reading and with reading difficulties. And I noticed that when these words have been treated, these high frequency words have been treated as whole words to memorize, we see a lot of errors for our struggling readers with words that look similar, like who and how, and does and said, and of and for and from. Because when we're treating them as whole chunks, and we're not breaking them up at the phoneme graphing level, so the letter sound level, like I just showed you, then kids get really confused because the word looks similar, and it has similar letters and it looks a similar length, but they get them so mixed up because they're not attending to every part of that word. So if we can guide them through the process of attending to every part of that word and matching the sounds to the letters that represent those sounds, then we can do all of our kids a big service. And it's an easy practice to implement. So if you're a parent or a teacher, it can take 2 minutes. If you're noticing that they're getting my and me mixed up, or does and said, or for and from, do for and from. So first talk about for and orthographically map it. Go through that process of talking about the sounds and then saying which letters represent those sounds, and then from, and practice that orthographic mapping process. And you will find so much more success with that as kids finally learn, oh yeah, it is different. And I know why, because I know the sounds and the relationships. So I hope you try this out. You will find a lot of success. I do this with all the reading kiddos that I work with, and it makes a big difference. And I will just say, if you are a parent or an early literacy instruction teacher in the K2 space, or you're helping kids remediating reading problems, this can be something that as they get older, and if they've been treated as whole words and their brains don't totally have the best skill of that orthographic mapping, some kids just have that skill built in, I guess, and so they're efficient at it already. But if they don't have that, by the time they're in 4th, 5th grade, it gets really hard to break that habit of looking at the whole word. So if you can start them early, if you can do the orthographic mapping early with them with those words, you're gonna find so much success. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you could grab some practical advice that you could implement right away with those words. I'll just say one more thing. If you want to know more research, if you're like me and like to dive into the research, I will put a link in the description of a great video that goes more into the science behind all of it. So I didn't go into too much detail of why this all works and the proof behind it, but you can go watch that video for more information. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you find success in your literacy teaching endeavors.